Hi everyone, welcome back to Have a Beer with Erik. This is review number 49, and for this week's review, we have a Firestone beer. This is one of their barrel-aged beers, and it usually comes in this box. It's one of their the proprietor's vintage, and I had last year's of this one, and last year's was actually a bigger bottle. They were just trying to format as a smaller bottle so that they can distribute more. So I'm actually kind of excited for this one. Last year's was very smooth, very rich and creamy, so I'm hoping we get the same out of that. And so this is Velvet Merkin. This is the vintage number 6, bourbon barrel aged oatmeal stout. And for the description of the beer, this says Velvet Merkin is a beer that almost wasn't, at least in name. After all, it is not our style to conceive monikers that are confounding, scandalous, or comical. But in this instance, we inadvertently achieved all three with Velvet Merkin. Once in a glass, however, Velvet Merkin is dead serious. This decadent oatmeal stout holds your nose hostage with chocolate and vanilla bourbon aromas. Rich flavors of dark chocolate, truffle, bourbon, and espresso ultimately yield a beer that is dangerously smooth and incredibly drinkable. So that's pretty much the description of this beer. Like it says, it's a bourbon barrel aged oatmeal stout, and we have more information on the bottle. We have the original gravity, which is 20 Plato, 21 IBUs. It says here that there were 6,700 cases produced, and then final gravity was 5 Plato. This is a British ale yeast that it's a house yeast from Firestone. And the SRM is 86, which is the color of the beer. And then it is 7.8% alcohol. And I don't think it has a bottling date. Might show on the bottle once I take out the beer, since a lot of times the date is kind of hard to see with the beer inside. So let's dive into this beer. Haven't had a Firestone beer in a while, so this should be good, hopefully. Alright, so we have about a finger and a half of head, a little bit on the dirty glass side of this. Apparently, I guess I didn't really properly wash it. As you can see, all the bubbles. Usually, the bubbles on the glass means that it wasn't. It's washed. The glass itself is washed, but for the instance of beer, it may not exactly be beer clean. So you just have to be thorough in washing your glassware. So, but there it is, and then I saw it right now. Okay, so the bottling date for this was September 21st, 2018 at 7:02 p.m. So that's the bottling date. So this beer is that's 4 months old, almost 5 months, or no, like just over 4 months old. So time to check it out. Cheers, guys. Actually, on the nose first, I have it's a very light, creamy smell, like a kind of milky, a bit chocolatey. Just a very light nose of of bourbon, a bit of toffee. It's a very for a stout, it's a very low, mellow kind of aroma. And I want to say it gives a very small hint of coffee, even though this beer does not have any coffee. So, all right, let's just dig in. Cheers, guys. This is interesting. Definitely on the lighter, smoother side. As you guys, noticed earlier, this is a barrel-aged stout, but also it's a barrel-aged oatmeal stout. Usually oatmeal stouts are on the lower percentage of ABV, and this one, even though it's barrel-aged, it's 7.8%. So you can kind of tell that this is a low percentage beer, and as a barrel-aged stout, because I usually, like, when I know I'm drinking a barrel-aged stout, I know I'm expecting something a bit heavier, but this is on the much lighter side, a very sessionable barrel-aged stout. I feel like it has a bit thinner body than a regular barrel-aged stout. Very sweet for sure. I have a lot of like milky sweetness to it. A lot of oatmeal stouts can also be like kind of like milk stouts. So and just from the oats too, it gets like a fluffier, rounder body out of it, and so the body comes out as a bit like a kind of pillowy, but then the flavor itself, I feel like it's a bit thin at least compared to other stouts. So yeah, it's definitely one of their lighter barrel-aged beers, or even just a barrel-aged beer in general from any brewery. This is definitely on the lighter spectrum. Just in general, not obviously not colorways, but like for example, their parabola is like probably twice as this, like the mouthfeel and like the taste and everything. It's this doesn't really come close to it, and I don't think that's where they're aiming for. They're aiming like a nice sessionable stout, a barrel-aged stout, where you get like the hint of the barrels and a good like milky character, but you don't end up like completely trashed by a barrel-aged stout, by a barrel-aged barrel stout. So I think that's where they're going for this. I don't think I might be exactly what I like the most out of a stout. I haven't had an oatmeal stout in a while. They're kind of a hit or miss, I feel, at least in San Diego. And also with barrel-aged beers, I think I've only had like one or two other ones that are actually pretty low percentage for a stout, and it just feels kind of weird because stouts are usually pretty heavy, and even if the base starts as kind of light, once you age it, it definitely gets on the heavier side. But I think I'm just not used to this, like to barrel-aged oatmeal stouts, and but still pretty nice to try it out, try something kind of new. Also, if you guys notice that description, it said the name is confounding, scandalous, and comical. If you're kind of weird, or you're in the acting business, you will know what a merkin is. If you're a normal person, or somebody that doesn't act, you will not know what a merkin is until probably right now, or unless you've had this beer already and you're curious. So Velvet Merkin is the barrel-aged version of their their Merlin. It's their Velvet Merlin, I believe it's called, and then they also have like a coffee version, the Mocha Merlin, and so for the barrel-aged they named it Velvet Merkin. And so Merkin is actually artificial pubic hair for actors that they wear for either plays or movies or TV shows or whatever. And it's kind of like a patch, and you just put it on. So it's something kind of weird, and that's why when they announced their Velvet Merkin this year on Instagram, they were like, at the end of the description, they were like, and yes, we are aware what Merkin means. So I don't know why they decided to go for Merkin instead of just a like barrel-aged Merlin. So that's probably a question that you guys should ask them. But yeah, it's definitely a pretty interesting beer. Something that you don't try very often. A barrel-aged oatmeal stout that's a pretty low percentage, very sessionable for sure. I know that I could drink this quite as easily as like an IPA, which is like really weird for me. It just feels kind of weird, but I don't know if I really dig into this. I think for my rating, I might give it like a 3.75. Um, I don't know why. I actually didn't even notice the alcohol percentage on this until like until I took it out of the box actually, because the box doesn't say the alcohol percentage, and so yeah, I mean, once I put it in the fridge, I was like, okay, this is gonna be a pretty interesting beer, and but I think that my 3.75 comes from the fact that I'm not sure this is a style for me, but I think it might be a great beer for its style, just not exactly something that I particularly enjoy. So I just I think that I might just leave it at 3.75. But and I think that might be for this week's review. I'm doing the Horus Hunineri tomorrow, Hunineni, and it's a huge beer fest by Horus, and then I'll just talk about more of that next week. But until then, we'll see you guys later. Cheers.